Hey everyone, today we're going to be checking out the Samurai collection, which is a collaboration between GORUCK and Carryology. This is the second iteration of this collection, and I was pretty bummed that I missed out on the original as this has such a cool story and design. As part of the second round of this collaboration, GORUCK and Carryology released a couple of different items. The ones that I have here in front of me are the 18-liter Double Compartment Bullet Ruck, the 26-liter GR2, and a 32-liter kit bag. So all of these are items that I featured on the channel in the past, and I really enjoyed using them. Where they stand out from the items that I've talked about before is in the materials and some of the little touches that are part of this collection. So I was very excited to have a chance to get hands-on with it. I actually just came back from a trip where I used the Double Compartment Bullet Ruck and the kit bag, and in this video I'm going to be talking about what it's been like to use these over the past couple of weeks. I'll show you how I've loaded them out, walk through all the features, and I'll also talk about how they compare to some of the other similar items that are currently on the market. Before jumping into the video, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Danny, and on this channel we love reviewing popular travel and everyday carry gear. If you like these types of videos and you'd be interested in seeing more, please consider subscribing as it helps the channel out a lot. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump in. Taking a look at the Double Compartment Bullet and the GR2, both of these are bags that I have covered extensively in prior videos, so I'm not going to go into as much detail on the areas that I've already talked about many times before. I really want to focus on the unique aspects of the collaboration and also some of the size differences between the Bullet and the GR2. In general, as far as the aesthetic, these have a little bit more of a slick style, so there's no molly webbing along the front or the sides or anything like that, which I really like. It just keeps things a little cleaner, more minimal. Now, as part of the collaboration, you do have the texture that's a part of this really unique fabric. And so you have a Japanese denim on the exterior that feels super rugged. It's meant to be very strong, durable. It also has a DWR treatment to give it a lot of weather resistance. And I was very curious on what this would actually feel like. I had read about the previous collaboration. People mentioned that this fabric was a little stiffer out of the box and that it would have a break-in period. It wasn't quite as rigid as I expected, but it does definitely remind me of my days using the 1000D Cordura and, just kind of the feeling of wearing that bag. It's not exactly the same. Again, these do have a little bit of flexibility here. I haven't been using both of them as much yet. And so, it does feel like a strong material. I like that it has a nice amount of weather resistance, even though I wouldn't think so if I didn't know about the specs of the bag. And then beyond that, you have the leather accenting on the bottom, as well as the handles. And so that also gives it a very classy, premium feel. Another unique aspect of this collaboration is the zipper pulls. So you have these silk zipper pulls that just have a very kind of cool aesthetic. They feel nice, very tactile. And so those were always the things that really stood out to me just when I saw the original collaboration. Visually, even though you can tell it's one of GORUCK's bags, it just has that extra bit of texture and style that makes it feel a little bit different. Also, as someone who's a huge fan of samurai shows and films, I just really like this whole idea. And then, of course, with the collaboration, you also have aqua guarded YKK zippers. And so I've been a big fan of GORUCK's aqua guarded zippers. I prefer them to the rain flaps, and so you don't have rain flaps on this bag, which I know some people might not like quite as much. I personally prefer it. I find that it makes it easier to open the zippers in general. And for the most part, even though these are aqua guarded, they have worked pretty smoothly. I haven't run into any issues. They don't feel quite as smooth out of the box as the wax canvas ones or the ones on the X-Pack collection that I reviewed on the channel, but I haven't had really any issues with it being really hard to open the compartments. And so that's been great to see across the bag. And it just continues to feel very rugged, very protective, as I'm used to seeing with GORUCK. And I'll be very curious on how this material kind of breaks in and patinas over time. I've seen some comments around that on the Carryology Facebook group. And so, it's very cool feeling material, very unique, and definitely feels like something that you can toss around. I actually took the Bullet Ruck and the kit bag on a recent trip, and it was definitely something that I placed in an overhead storage compartment. The double compartment went under the seat in front of me, and so I really just kind of tossed this around like any other bag And as you can see, there's not really any major signs of wear, which I was happy to see. I was worried that it was maybe gonna get dirty or stained, and so far it has performed like a champ. And the other aspect about the collaborations, which is always a cool thing, particularly with this collaboration, is the patches. And so, as with any of them, there is a distinct patch that's created for the release, and these just look super cool. You have the dual samurais kind of in the middle of a fight here, and the samurai patches have, this very glossy, shiny feel that looks very premium, feels awesome. This is the one aspect of the bag that I was a little squeamish with when I was traveling. When I put the bags anywhere where they might bump into something, I could definitely kind of already see it getting scratched up, and it looks like did a pretty good job. Didn't run into any major issues. You can definitely see that some fingerprints will start to show here. And yeah, I love that I've been lucky enough to have a couple of them. So if one of them gets scratched up, not a huge deal. On the Carryology article, they talked about, the idea of maybe allowing it to patina, which I think could look kind of cool. But, that is a very kind of a premium and expensive piece of the collection. And so I could see how some might want to take a little bit more care of it. And again, it was the only thing that I was a little bit scared of damaging. I took some extra caution whenever I was placing my bag or the duffel anywhere where it might get, hit or scratched. And, I might leave it at home for future trips and get a cool patch so that I don't have to worry about that. And then removing the patch, you can see underneath, you have the GORUCK arrowhead. And so still blends in pretty nicely with the bag with the blacked out hook and loop backing there. And then taking a look at the capacities of the bags, I have the 18-liter double compartment bullet and the 26-liter GR2. The 26-liter GR2 has long been one of my favorite minimal travel bags. It's deceptively versatile because it can hold a lot, but it never looks super tall or bulky. I've used this as a personal item, both internationally and domestically. It can work as a daily bag. It's a little bit deep. As an EDC bag, it can feel bulky, but when you just want to have one bag, it can get the job done. And then the double compartment bullet has quickly become one of my favorite EDC form factors because it offers something that feels similar as far as kind of the footprint on my back to the 21-liter GR1. Maybe slightly taller, but in general, it's something that just feels great as I'm wearing it for my height. It doesn't feel overwhelmingly bulky, overwhelmingly tall, and it just strikes all the dimensions that, work well for me. And it gives me the layout of the GR2, but in a form factor that doesn't feel as wide. The width is where I really notice the biggest difference between the two bags. The 18-liter just has, kind of a skinnier width, and so it just makes it feel that much sleeker while still providing enough depth to hold, much more than you would expect for something that is listed as an 18-liter bag. And so both of these are very capable, flexible sizes. Which one is going to be, better for you will depend on the use cases. For day-to-day usage, I still think that the 18-liter is going to be a little better. For minimal travel, I think the 26-liter is going to be better. And then I think that they can both work for each use case. I think they'll just kind of be slightly better depending on which one you're going to be using it more for. And on the recent flight that I took, the 18-liter double compartment worked great as a personal item, easily slid under the seat in front of me. And again, the 26-liter GR2 I've used many times on different flights without any issues. Continuing with the harness systems, this is probably the other area that's going to be a big difference between the Bullet and the GR2. They have a similar style to what you've seen in other versions of these bags. So very, rigid padding. They're going to be super supportive. They're going to have a little bit of a break-in period, particularly since, these, like I mentioned, feel closer to kind of a Cordura strap. They don't feel quite as ready to go out of the box. But a couple of things to call out here. First off, I like that both offer webbing on the straps out of the box. So if you want to add a sternum strap, you'll be able to do so without having to send this into Scars to have that added. So great to see that that was included. And then the width of these two straps is, gonna feel fairly different. So it'll come down to preferences. I've heard a lot of people mention that they prefer the wider GR2 straps. I've been a fan of those for many years. I do think that for my day-to-day, when I'm not carrying as much, this can feel like overkill, whereas the thinner straps, I haven't had any issues with them. I did notice with the break-in period, since these were still stiffer, as I was wearing this, they tended to kind of slide towards my shoulder. They didn't quite kind of mold around, as well as some of the other double compartment bullets that I've used. And you know, they are more narrow, so if you're carrying heavier weight over a longer period of time, they're not gonna feel as comfortable as the GR2 straps, in my opinion. And then on the back panel, you have a nice amount of padding, but again, this is another one of those differences. With the bullets, you have the reinforced kind of lumbar area that's not been present on any of the GR2s or GR1s to my knowledge, not on any of the ones that I've tested so far. And I think that this works nicely if you align it with the spot on your back where, you know, it feels right. And I think that it's nice to have that extra bit of support. And then with the GR2, you have kind of the standard layout that you've come to know from GORUCK's bags over the years. So if you're carrying a lot of weight, or you know, you just don't like a narrower strap, then the GR2 will be the way to go there. But I've really enjoyed using both of them. And then you do have the dedicated laptop compartment on the back, also with the aqua guarded zipper. So great that these offer that protection, and you're gonna get a little bit more space with the 26-liter GR2. So, you know, something to keep in mind as well, but padded, suspended, as we've come to expect from GORUCK's bags. And then taking a look at the organizational layouts, this has always been one of the things that I've really liked about both bags. And you have almost an identical layout. That was one of the coolest things when the double compartment bullet was announced, is that you basically have a smaller GR2. So you have the compartment on the front, zippered compartment here, and so easy to access. You can start to see some of that distinct lining that's also a part of the collaboration. So really cool patterning, and the red interior is different from the typical orange that Carryology collaborations use. And so both are gonna have the same pocketing. The difference is gonna be in just how much space they offer. And so they have the top quick access pocket, which has distinct orange zipper pull, whereas the other ones have a black one. This one's orange to just kind of make it stand out a little bit more. On the Bullet Ruck in general, this compartment can feel a little bit tighter. It can still hold my AirPods, some charging cables without any issues, but anything larger than that is gonna be a little bit tough. And so you can see that same lining here, protection. And for the GR2, you have the same thing, just a little bit more space. It all fits more comfortably inside, and I continue to love this pocket. And on the front, you have the secondary clamshell compartment. And so the zippers go down so that you can open this all the way on both of these. And you're gonna have a similar layout with a couple of different zippered pockets. You have some volume here that you can use to store your stuff. At the moment, the GR2 has a travel setup, the Bullet has an EDC setup, and I'll kind of swap between the two so that you can maybe get a sense of some of the differences. And so I have the smaller compressible packing cube from Peak Design there, as well as a couple of different accessories here in the built-in field pocket. So you can see the width there, that's gonna be different, also the height on these. And then with this nice material here, I like that it's flexible to mold around the items that are on the inside. And so I have a packable tote bag from Peak Design, which is quickly becoming one of those accessories I always have with me on a trip. I've used this so much for groceries, for storing clothing and stuff when I'm going to the beach. I have a headlamp and then a wired set of headphones here in the slip pockets. I didn't really use this zippered pocket for anything. And then on this top pocket, I just have my sunglasses. This is what I'll often use as just kind of an additional quick access pocket. And then for the Bullet, in this compartment, I have my sunglasses, and you still have this organization on the back. I'm using this zippered pocket here to store these AR glasses that I use to watch movies and stuff, and an alpaca admin pouch. And on the lid here, I did end up using this for my USB-C hub, as well as some of the charging cables that I use regularly. And then for this top compartment, I didn't really store too much here. I always kind of balance what I use with these two compartments, just so that they're not really tied up against each other, particularly when I have the patch on. And then on the front compartment here, I had the iPad, which is gonna fit comfortably in either one. And then moving into the main compartment, another clamshell layout here. Nice wide opening, and same thing for the Bullet. And now you have a pretty clear side-by-side view of the GR2 and the double compartment bullet. So I'll kind of swap the layouts here. You can see that in the 26 liter GR2, I have the Peak Design compressible packing cube at the moment, as well as a DOP kit. So that fits in there pretty comfortably. I could have squeezed this additional Peak Design cube in here if I wanted to. It just all starts to become a little bit tighter, and so I put it in the front, but either one works there. And then the packing cube fits comfortably. And now on the inside, you can see slip pocket, a couple of rows of webbing. You have quick access pocket kind of poking in here. Again, very cool liner. And on the double compartment bullet, I have a pretty standard kind of daily loadout. So a couple of pouches, my Civic Axis pouch, 2 liters. I have the Bellroy Tech kit, the Beats Studio wireless headphones, and then I have the Evergood Civic Axis pouch, 1/2 liter. And so you can see the width here just feels like there's a little bit of additional space with the same items that I included. And then putting in the packing cube, this one also fits very comfortably here, but now you can see it just all feels slightly tighter. This would be pretty tough to kind of fit if the rest of the bag is packed out. I think I can make it work, but it feels tighter. And then again, the DOP kit here. So can still handle a similar layout, you just don't have as much leftover space. And so, you know, really great. That's why I'm such a fan of these clamshell layouts, is because of that flexibility. And then on the lid, you have a couple of differences here between the two bags. With the double compartment, you have a singular zippered mesh pocket. So it's just a tall compartment, can be good for separating out clothing, a jacket. And then with the GR2, you have a more kind of almost old school layout. This is the one that I had in my first GR2 with the additional mesh pocket on the lid here, as well as the pocket on the bottom that's a little larger with the vertically oriented zipper so that you can get to it without opening the compartment all the way up. So interesting that this is the one aspect where they're different. Could be just because this is smaller and has less space. So it'll come down to your preferences. If you don't really like separating out your stuff quite as much, or even if you don't use these compartments, maybe this elastic material can give you some extra flexibility. But you know, I don't generally use either of these that much because all of my stuff is in the pouches. So, you know, nice to have, but great that it just stays out of the way. And that's about it as far as, you know, kind of the 18 liter versus 26 liter and the overview of the Samurai specific versions of these two bags. They have been awesome to use, you know, very unique. I think that the material can take some getting used to just because it has to break in. It also, you know, just has a distinct kind of texture and feel. You know, it looks different. That's part of what's cool about it. Same with the zipper pulls. It just, you know, has a lot of personality. And, you know, if you're a fan of these two form factors and you want something that is going to be very rugged and have a little bit of a different appearance, I think they are definitely worth checking out. But of course, if you just want the bags without, you know, the specific denim material and the zipper pulls and liner and things like that, if you get them in, you know, ripstop nylon, Cordura, or X-Pack or wax canvas, they're going to be fantastic to consider for pretty much any sort of situation. And then I just wanted to do a quick run through of the kit bag. And I almost didn't purchase this because I have another kit bag as well as a couple of other duffels that I like using, but it was just too tempting with how, you know, well this matched up with the backpacks that were part of the collection. And I have to say that every time I travel with a duffel and a backpack, even though it's not quite as comfortable as some other travel methods, I am always impressed with the flexibility that it provides. So this comes in at about 32 liters. So it doesn't seem like a huge bag, but because of the simple layout that it offers, it is able to hold a lot of stuff and then squeeze into tighter overhead compartments. And so that's one of the things I continue to love about duffel and backpack travel. And this one did a great job while also looking quite cool. And so you have the same Japanese denim exterior, which, you know, held up very well. And I like that even though it's a little rigid, it was still flexible enough for what I needed. You have the very nice handles with the leather accenting on the handles, making it very comfortable to carry. So that was great to see. You have the YKK zippers along with the silk zipper pull here. And then you have the included shoulder strap that had the matching sort of patterning and materials here on the strap. Very comfortable to wear. I like how long this padding is and how much length the strap has, so you can carry it in a couple of different ways. You also have the excellent buckles here so you can easily release it. It also doesn't feel like this is gonna tear or anything like that. So simple but very effective. And this material does feel much more rugged than the 500D kit bag that I have, which has worked well, but you know, extra peace of mind here, except for the patch. I think I'm just gonna be too squeamish to regularly travel with this patch because it's too nice and I'm worried about it getting scratched. But I did take it with me and it worked out pretty well for the most part. I avoided any major collisions. And yeah, the form factor here, same as what you've seen in other videos where I featured the kit bag. You have the dual external compartments. You have the leather accenting on the bottom, which feels really nice. You know, I was placed this down a lot while I was traveling and, you know, no major scuffs or issues. I'm sure this will develop its patina as I use it more. And then, you know, moving into the layout, you have the pocket on the front, which I use to store my tablet when I wanted to get to it a little bit more quickly. You have an internal zippered mesh pocket. And then for the main compartment, you have this flap that comes over and covers the main zipper. And I don't really have any issues with it. I saw some comments with people that maybe didn't like the red quite as much, but you know, I think that it worked fine. And then you have a pretty standard sort of duffel layout here. It opens wide enough to make it easy to load. It stands up on its own, and at the moment I have the same packing cube layout, smaller compressible cube, toiletry bag, and then I also have the larger compressible packing cube, and there was a ton of space left over. And so just always surprised with how much it can store. And on the inside, you have a zippered pocket at the top for smaller items that you don't want getting lost, as well as zippered pockets on either end to give you a little bit of internal organization. And then you can see that red liner on the inside to match up with the bag. So, you know, just a great companion piece, or on its own. You know, this is an excellent duffel for people that want something simple, functional. I know there's people that aren't crazy about the kit bags in general, and you know, as always, it comes down to preference, but you know, it gets the job done for what I need, combines well with the Bullet. And you know, if you're looking for a kit bag, whether it be a different material or this particular collaboration, I think that it'll be a pretty nice travel companion, or for carrying stuff like gym gear or anything like that. And so to wrap up, it's been a pretty great experience testing out the Samurai collection over the past couple of weeks. As with other Carryology collaborations, this is a limited release, so it's not going to be easy to get this directly from GORUCK's site. You can probably find them secondhand on the Carryology Facebook group or eBay. I have seen a few people that are trying them out, and it's not really for them, so they're letting them go. So, you know, keep an eye out for that. And the pricing on these is definitely in a premium category, both because it's a GORUCK bag and also because it's a collaboration. And so the Double Compartment Bullet Ruck cost me around $500, and then the 26-liter GR2 was closer to $800, and the kit bag came in at about $350. And so for me, as a backpack enthusiast and someone who's a GORUCK fan, of course, I enjoy kind of checking out these limited editions. You know, I think it's worthwhile. They're very premium materials. GORUCK's bags have always been great for me over the years, but you know, I do recognize that that's probably just a price point that doesn't make sense for many people who aren't particularly enthusiastic about this style of bag. And I do think there's going to be some great options from GORUCK and other companies at lower price points that may be worth considering. And so, as I mentioned earlier in the video, these are all bags that I've featured on the channel in the past, and I've really enjoyed using them in the various materials that they're offered in. And so the Double Compartment Bullet Ruck I've used in Dyneema, in ripstop nylon, in wax canvas. Same for the GR2, I've used it in Dyneema, wax canvas, Cordura, and in all of the fabrics, I have really enjoyed these bags. The form factors are some of my favorites. As far as which one I prefer, I have been particularly a big fan of the wax canvas Double Compartment Bullet Ruck as of late. I've been using that bag a lot. I believe it may still be available on GORUCK's site if you want to check it out. I've also used the wax canvas version of the GR2 quite a bit. And so regardless of the fabric that you get it in, you're still going to get something that has a great organizational layout, that's solidly built, And then of course there is the GR1, which is one of my all-time favorites. I really like the simpler layout that offers, particularly the 21 liter size is able to hold a deceptive amount but still maintain a slim profile. It's comfortable to wear, it has a minimal but useful layout, and so I've actually done some videos in the past where I've compared various GORUCK models if you want to check them out. And if you're just interested in a GORUCK bag but you don't want to pay the premium for the collaboration, I definitely recommend you check any of those out. The next bags these made me think of are the Evergood CPL24 and CTB20. Like these bags, they've actually been part of Carryology collaborations in various fabrics and styles, and I'm a big fan of both of those bags. They have some of the best organizational layouts on the market, volume independent pockets that are very easy to use, and then they have, unique harness system, solid materials. You can now get them in wax canvas or in ballistic nylon, and so very rugged, and you can get them in a couple of different sizes. The CPL is offered not only in the 24 liter size, but a 16 liter, I believe a 28 liter may still be available. And then the CTB comes in a 20 liter size, 26 liter size, and a 35 liter size. And one of the best things about the CTB line is that you get the dual external water bottle pockets if you like to have them, and then you still have the CPL option, which is gonna be a little bit more minimal, cleaner, but both of them are gonna be functional, durable bags that are just gonna work well in a lot of different environments. And then the last company that I'll mention here is Bellroy, and they have an incredible lineup of bags and other gear. To me, their style falls somewhere in between GORUCK and Evergood's as far as providing something that's minimal, but it's gonna be a little bit more modern and techy, so it's gonna be great for taking into an office setting. And I really love the variety of bags that they have. I've been a big fan of the Transit Work Pack and Transit Work Pack Pro. They have clamshell style opening, comfortable harness systems, a nice layout, durable materials, and so they check off a lot of the same boxes. There's also the Venture Ready series, which is a little bit more rugged. Very cool layout on that as well. And they have some great travel bags, they have duffel bags, pouches, so really cool ecosystem of gear, but their bags in particular have always stood out to me. I really love the durability, and if you're looking again for something that's gonna be minimal but still give you a little bit of that modern flair, then those are gonna be fantastic options to consider. With that being said, the Samurai collection holds up well against all those options. It's definitely not gonna be for everybody given the higher price point and the unique fabrics, but I think that it's a really interesting collection. I've been a big fan of GORUCK and these styles of bags for a long time, so it's great to see them with just a little bit of that added flair of the collaborations, but again, not gonna be for everybody, and you can definitely get, the lower price non-collaboration versions of these. I think they're gonna be just as good, probably better for most people, but as I mentioned earlier, if you're an enthusiast, if you love kind of unique bags that have an interesting story, or you're just a fan of these collaborations, then I think that this is, a worthy addition to Carryology's lineup. And I'm curious to hear what you all think of this new iteration of the Samurai collection. Let me know what you think, or if you'd like to see them featured in future videos or comparisons. And I want to thank you for watching and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed this one, please give us a like, and if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming videos, and we'll see you in the next one.